From the Canadian High Commission in London came a message that reverberated far beyond the conference room. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stepped before the press and renewed his country's long-standing call for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. His words were not just a restatement of policy, but a pointed reminder that peace in the region remains inseparable from the principle of self-determination. Carney opened by acknowledging the decades-long Canadian stance. Since 1947, Canada has supported a two-state solution in line with the United Nations founding principles. But on this day in London, he framed the issue with unusual directness. There will never be a durable peace for Israel, he said, unless the Palestinian people's rights to self-determination are fully respected. Only a Palestinian state that is both free and viable, living in peace and security alongside Israel, can anchor long-term stability. His statement came at a moment when violence and distrust still define daily life in the region. For Carney, the message was that these cycles will persist until the world confronts the root political question. It was a call to the international community, and especially to Israel's allies, to recommit to a path often discussed but rarely advanced. Reporters noted that Carney's delivery was calm and deliberate, yet the tone carried urgency. Behind the measured words lay the understanding that without movement on Palestinian statehood, every ceasefire will be temporary, every peace summit incomplete. By linking Israel's own security to Palestinian sovereignty, Carney sought to recenter the debate on coexistence rather than confrontation. Beyond the Middle East, Carney used the London press event to address other pressing global issues. He turned to the ongoing war in Ukraine, emphasizing that while Canada remains a steadfast partner in the Western coalition, ultimate deterrence and credible security guarantees for Kyiv depend on continued United States engagement. He voiced encouragement at recent statements from Washington that reaffirmed this commitment. His comments tied together two distant conflicts under one principle, that peace and stability cannot be maintained without consistent international support for self-determination and defense against aggression. Shifting to economic matters, Carney highlighted Canada's recently signed trade deal with Indonesia, the world's fourth largest population and a rapidly growing economy. He described it as the first comprehensive trade agreement between the two countries and an important step for Canada as it diversifies its trade ties in a shifting global economy. He also spoke about strengthening cooperation with Mexico, setting specific targets to be tracked in the coming months as the three North American partners prepare for future reviews of the Canada-US-Mexico agreement. In weaving these themes together, Middle Eastern peace, European security and global trade, Carney projected a vision of Canadian foreign policy that is both principled and pragmatic. He stressed that military alliances and commercial agreements mean little unless anchored in a stable international order founded on rights, mutual recognition and reliable institutions. The reaction to Carney's remarks on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was swift. Palestinian representatives welcomed his words as an affirmation of their own aspirations for a viable, sovereign state. Israeli officials, while acknowledging Canada's friendship, expressed concern that such statements could overlook their ongoing security challenges. Analysts in Washington suggested that Carney's remarks, though not new in content, came at a delicate moment when the US and European partners are seeking to revive stalled peace initiatives but remain cautious about timing. For many observers, Carney's language, especially his use of the phrase free and viable, signaled a recognition that any future Palestinian state must have real territorial and political substance. Without such qualities, the so-called two-state solution risks becoming little more than a diplomatic slogan. This nuance resonated among policy experts who argue that genuine sovereignty, not just symbolic statehood, is necessary to end decades of conflict. The Prime Minister's remarks also carried historical weight. Canada's original support for the UN partition plan in 1947 reflected a belief that two states could live side by side. In the decades since, the peace process has been marked by fleeting breakthroughs and long periods of stagnation, punctuated by violence and mistrust. Carney's speech, therefore, was as much a reminder of an old commitment as it was a challenge to today's leaders to act. Journalists covering the event noted that even when Carney answered light-hearted questions, including one about the Women's Rugby World Cup final, he quickly returned to the core issues of peace, security and global cooperation. The contrast underscored his determination to keep the focus on the serious challenges at hand. The timing of Carney's remarks was not accidental. With ongoing hostilities in Gaza and heightened tensions in the West Bank, international mediators have struggled to restart meaningful dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians. Regional actors like Egypt, Jordan and Qatar continue to play intermediary roles, while Iran's growing influence adds another layer of complexity. By reiterating Canada's position in such a public and pointed way, Carney aimed to push the conversation back toward the fundamentals that without a legitimate political solution, humanitarian aid and military deterrence can offer only temporary relief. Foreign policy experts see potential ripple effects. Some suggest Carney's call could lend weight to upcoming debates at the United Nations, where member states are expected to revisit questions of recognition, borders and security guarantees. Others caution that without concrete follow-up by major powers, speeches alone will not shift the entrenched dynamics on the ground. Still, the Canadian leader's words were welcomed by those advocating for renewed diplomatic momentum. Carney's focus on principles of self-determination linked distant crises in a common narrative. By highlighting that Israel's security, Ukraine's sovereignty, and global trade stability all depend on respect for international law and credible commitments, he underscored the interconnected nature of today's challenges. This framing suggests that peace in one part of the world cannot be achieved in isolation from broader efforts to strengthen global governance. For Canada, the speech also marked a reaffirmation of its place in the international order. Often seen as a middle power that leverages diplomacy and multilateralism, Canada, under Carney's leadership, appears intent on shaping, not merely following, global debates. His London address reflected a willingness to articulate clear positions even on contentious issues. Public reactions among Canadians themselves were mixed but engaged. Advocacy groups supportive of Palestinian statehood praised the Prime Minister's clarity, while some pro-Israel organisations expressed disappointment, fearing it might embolden extremists or oversimplify Israel's security concerns. Editorial boards in Canadian newspapers described the speech as a return to principled pragmatism in foreign policy, a phrase that captures the balance Carney appeared to seek. Diplomats in Europe noted that Carney's intervention may influence allied positions as they coordinate future initiatives in the region. While acknowledging that Canada is not a direct party to Middle East negotiations, they emphasise that consistent voices from trusted partners can help set expectations and maintain focus on political solutions. As the press conference concluded, the question lingered whether this renewed call for a viable two-state framework will translate into tangible progress. Carney himself offered no grand new roadmap, only a reminder that the path to lasting peace is known but untravelled, blocked more by political will than by diplomatic imagination. The significance of his words lies partly in their timing and partly in their framing. By drawing connections between regional conflicts, global trade, and the principles of self-determination, Carney presented a coherent vision of Canadian engagement in world affairs. For audiences watching across continents, the speech was both a policy statement and a call to moral reflection. As the cameras turned off and reporters filed their stories, the central message remained that durable peace for Israel is inseparable from justice for Palestinians, and that international cooperation in defence, in trade and in diplomacy rests on respect for the rights and security of all peoples. For those listening in London that day, Carney's words carried both the weight of history and a challenge for the future. Whether they will prompt renewed negotiations or become another well-intentioned appeal consigned to diplomatic archives will depend on how the world's leaders respond in the months ahead. In closing, the press conference was not merely a routine diplomatic appearance. It was an effort to remind the international community that without addressing the fundamental political realities at the heart of conflicts, no amount of temporary ceasefires, military deterrence or economic aid will bring lasting peace. It was a call for persistence, for principled engagement, and for the courage to return to the negotiating table.
Morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Authoritarianism is resurgent, and consensus within many democracies has fractured. But to meet with the leaders to make sure the work's being done, you have to mark progress as it's being done.
C'est une disgrâce et une décision qui va encourager le terrorisme. J'aimerais reprendre votre parole.
It's going to be. I mean, this is a match for the ages. It looks like it was going well. Ok. Une pointe de plus. Une pointe de plus pour le Canada. Ça, c'est le pays. Ok. D'accord. Merci. Okay. It's been the position of every Canadian government since 1947 to support a two-state solution, consistent with the principles of the United Nations of self-determination and human rights. Further, there will never be a durable peace for Israel unless those rights of self-determination are respected for the Palestinian people, and so a Palestinian state that's free and viable, living in peace and security side by side with the State of Israel. We have been clear from the start, as a member of the Coalition of the Willing, well, Canada will do our bit, that ultimately some form of U.S. backstop to any security guarantee of Ukraine that is provided by the Coalition of the Willing will be necessary. So I'm encouraged by the most recent reinforcement of U.S. intent that the President's comments indicate. Yeah, major trade deal with the fourth largest population economy in the world, Indonesia, a country that's on track to be the fifth largest economy in the world over the next 2 decades. The first major trade deal for that country with Canada. It's comprehensive, signed. A deepening of the partnership with Mexico, a very specific set of objectives that are going to be, partnerships that are going to be tracked and built on over the course of next 3, 6, 9 months, consistent with the review of CUSMA with the United States, crucial.